Apple announced the transition to Apple Silicon just over a year ago, but as of now, only the most basic Macs got the upgrade. I think it's reasonable enough to expect other models will be refreshed very soon, not only becoming more powerful, but also by getting a new redesign, specifically the more professional ones in this case. The next one we'll see a refresh of, I think, is the MacBook Pro. So here's my concept of how I'm guessing it'll be. The reason why I think this one will be the first prosumer Mac Apple will give Apple Silicon to is not just because that's what the leaks are saying, but simply because it makes sense. From what I've seen, it's the one people have been requesting the most, it's the most versatile, and in a way it's also one of the most iconic, I'd say, even more than the iMac in some aspects. It's the one they always use for ads or WWDC invites even. So what did I change? Well, it isn't a new Apple design if you can't actually injure yourself with it. Thus, I made it a lot boxier and sharper. Jokes aside, I think this new aesthetic Apple is going for is very nice, and it's surely impressive to see how thin they can make their stuff now. From the keyboard I removed the touch bar because apparently everyone hates it, and I replaced it with full-size function keys. Basically, it has the same exact keyboard as the new iMacs. Touch ID included, obviously. And actually, I think Touch ID doesn't really make much sense on Macs. I mean, it's fine, but Face ID would simply be better. To do anything on a computer, you already have to stand precisely in front of the display. It would actually work better here than it does on iPads and iPhones. But if they really wanted to bring Face ID to the Macs, the new iMac would have been a perfect time to start doing it. But they didn't. I guess they must have some strange long-term plan. But it still has black bezels, unlike the iMac, and probably the next redesigned MacBook Airs too, because I think those white bezels will be reserved only for the casual products. I also gave it more I/O because it seems that Apple's plan to eliminate every other type of port besides the USB-C didn't really work out, and I mean, the HDMI and the SD card slot never hurt anyone, did they? Though what I agree should not make a return is the USB-A, because it's terrible. It looks symmetrical, but it actually isn't. That's what you call a design crime. Also, I know some leaks are talking about MagSafe making a comeback, but I don't really think so, because last year they revived the name for the iPhones, right? But the iPhone MagSafe has basically nothing in common with the old MagSafe. The only type of MagSafe that would work on MacBooks is, I think, one like the old one. But then, why would they want to have two entirely different charging methods with the same name? It's just confusing, honestly. I hope they don't do stupid stuff with the I/O like they unfortunately did for the iMac, of removing ports from the base models for no reason. Also, I put rounded corners on the display of this concept because I think it looks cool, but it's not something I expect happening actually, because for some reason they don't like them on Macs. Okay, the iPhone, the iPad, the watch, sure, but God forbid the iMac screen has rounded corners. Now, for all the random predictions, I think the SoC will be named M1X, not M2, because by following their naming conventions, the number refers to the generation, while the letter, or its absence, refers to the tire. Now we gotta talk about our very dear friend,
5G.
For years people have been asking for cellular connectivity on MacBooks. Is it happening this time? In my opinion, with
5G
being so trendy now and a redesign on the way, it would be the perfect time. But I feel this is one of those things that when it happens, we already knew months and months in advance, and I don't remember any leaks suggesting it. This new MacBook Pro will probably come out at the end of the year, maybe in October, to avoid stealing attention from the iPhones. Because, let's face it, the new iPhones are probably going to be very boring. It will come in two sizes, with 14 and 16-inch displays, but not necessarily at the same time, because the last 13-inch MacBook Pro came out not even a year ago, so they may want to release the bigger model first, I guess. But I think the two models will be identical performance-wise, the only differences being the screen size and stuff like the battery or the speakers. The 14-inch version will start at $1799, I predict, while the 16-inch version at $1999. But this time, 16 gigs of RAM will be standard, with options for at least 32 and 64 gigs. The M1X will also be used for a more powerful version of the iMac, that Apple may or may not want to call iMac Pro, but I think regardless of the name, it won't cost as much as the old model, and it obviously won't be in the same extremely professional market, right? Now, this last one is more of an hope than a prediction, but I hope they will also use the M1X for a somewhat less expensive tower Mac, the one we have been calling the Mac Pro Mini basically. It's not entirely speculation since there are some leaks regarding it. Anyway, if you're interested, I already made a video about it. So, do you think my predictions make sense? Let me know. Ciao!